Hey guys, here we go into talking about my prediction video for Billy Joe Saunders versus David Lemieux. This is going to be a fun fight, you guys. This is going to be a really fun fight. There's going to be a lot of film study in this fight. I'm going to be justifying my prediction. Usually I do like keys to victories for each fighter. And I talk about, oh, I think he's going to win because of this. I think he's going to win. Or he could win because of this. Or these some of the tactics. Or this some of that. But to be honest, I kind of think that Billy Joe Saunders is going to get smashed. I think it's going to be, I think he's going to get a beating, and I don't know if I'm going to say, it's going to go past 3 rounds. I think it's going to be one of those kind of fights. No offense to all you Billy Joe Saunders fans. I appreciate you guys coming to my channel, checking out my videos. If you guys have like any other any beefs with what I've got to say, I'm going to pause the film study right here. Because that's where we're going to start talking. But the first, actually, I'll just replay this part. This is just like what happens when you can't control David Lemieux. Like, look at this guy; he's a monster. Like throwing these punches. And we'll talk about how Billy Joe Saunders does control the distance and why I don't think it's going to be effective and the opportunities that he has to win in the fight. And but if you guys have any concerns about it, or you guys think for another reason why Billy Joe Saunders might be able to win, let me know in the comment section below. From what I watched of the fight, of these two fights, him fighting this southpaw and Billy Joe Saunders fighting what's that guy's name? I'm blanking on him. Chris Eubank Jr. I just don't think that Billy Joe Saunders has the punching power to worry David Lemieux, and David Lemieux is going to be throwing bombs all fight. Even the attempts that Billy Joe Saunders uses to control the space between them to keep David Lemieux off of him, I don't think are going to be effective, because he doesn't do it with feints. He doesn't use lead hand control. There are a lot of things that he doesn't do, and I think that's, usually like when two fighters don't use hand control or dominance of the lead hand, like you saw in the Lomachenko fight, as soon as Rigondeaux gave up lead hand control, he stopped having control of the space between them, and that allowed Lomachenko to set up his punches, close the distance really easily, and because of the fact that Lomachenko had such an active guard, Rigondeaux didn't know when to counter and when not to counter, and he just wound up out of position all the time. And I think this fight's going to be very similar in that regard, in that I think that David Lemieux is going to be able to take away any lead hand control or control of the distance that Billy Joe Saunders has. Now, we're going to talk about how Billy Joe Saunders does control the distance, and it's with his jab. Right here you can see him shooting the jab. There's no setup to it. He's not feinting. He doesn't do any probing before. He doesn't know if it's going to be safe or not. And he just kind of commits to the jab right there. As you can see here, committing to the jab. And a few things I want to talk about. Look where he goes after it, right? He leans into his left side. Part of the reason why he does this is when he does throw his jab, and I had a good angle of it before, his hips, look at how his hips turn, right? How they turn into his foot, right? Because it's kind of a power jab, right? He's getting all of his weight into it. But because he transfers his weight, and I don't know if you guys can see it real well, but pay attention to his hips right here. When he steps forward, boom, so he's jabbing right there, and then all of his weight continues to move forward onto his right leg, right? Because he's transferring his weight as he jabs, and he's not lifting his toes, kind of. That's how you would say it, right? Like when you step with your jab, especially when you step with your jab, you need to keep your weight on your front leg in your heel so that you don't lean into it, you don't lunge into it, and you're able to keep your balance and keep your weight on your back leg so you can come forward with the cross. But as you can see, Billy Joe Saunders doesn't do that. He leans into the shots, and you can see in this instance, he doesn't even get back far enough to where he can get out of the way of the counter from Chris Eubank Jr. right there, the body shot, right? Boom. But he steps with the jab, and he leans into it. It's a good jab. I don't doubt that you don't want to get hit by it, right? Especially over the course of a 12-round fight. You don't want to get hit by it all night long. But I'll start showing some film study on why I don't think it's going to be effective when we get to David Lemieux. But again, this is another problem with him stepping with his jab right here. So he steps, and their feet do kind of like maybe touch a little bit for a second, but because of his weight, the way that he's shifting his weight when he puts all his weight on his front leg, when he steps with his jab, he winds up horribly out of position right here, and that easily allows Chris Eubank Jr. to come back with that counter you saw. And then look at how hard it is for him to get Billy Joe Saunders on the ropes. You know, Billy Joe Saunders just got his guard up. You know, he's not pivoting or turning. You know, very sloppily kind of moving back. You know, not pivoting or turning. And Eubank is able to get him on the ropes very easily. Again, more countering for the jab. He goes to the body this time. He feints up high by bringing his guard up, and then goes to the body. But it doesn't affect Eubank Jr. and he's able to catch him with that counter. And you don't want to be getting hit by counters with by David Lemieux. And I know what you're saying immediately. David Lemieux not a counter puncher. David Lemieux is a complete fighter. You know, aside from that ass beating that he took from Golovkin, David Lemieux is one of the best fighters in the world. Like, as far as I'll say 3-star fighters, I still haven't updated that thing, but I call them C-level fighters, right? Who don't use a lot of feints and they don't use a lot of probing, they don't use a lot of control, right? And they just don't have those highest techniques where you're not just worried about what you're doing and controlling what you're doing, you're controlling what your opponent is doing as well. As far as that goes, David Lemieux is one of the best C-level fighters in the world. You know, speed, power, he does have great counters, and I'll show you them in a minute. And he's got a great offense, you know, and he does do some feinting, very basic feints, but very effective when your opponent is not controlling the space between you, just like we see Billy Joe Saunders is not doing here. He's looking to set up his offense off his jab, but he's not feinting, he's not probing, and then shooting the jab, the right hand to the body, as you can see. Boom, he lands the shot right, but look at how he pulls straight back. And this is another problem that I see with Billy Joe Saunders, and why, after he punches, look where he moves. You know, does he use defensive responsibility? Does he duck? Does he get his guard up? Does he control his opponent's counters? Does he pivot and move off the line? And he doesn't do any of these things. And I'll show you starting here why that's important. So right away in the fight with this guy, David Lemieux sees that he can't really lead. Look at how active David Lemieux's guard is, right? First off, right? Probing, right? He's got his active guard. He's moving his lead hand a lot. And his opponent's like, hey, stop that, right? And his opponent, to be honest, his opponent's a pretty decent fighter. You know, this guy is a pretty good fighter. He understood that he needed to control the distance. He understood that he didn't have to do it with punches all the time, directed at his opponent. And he was able to move off the line enough to get Lemieux to stop being the one to dictate the action, right? And I'll show that here. So this is the beginning of the first round, and David Lemieux's having a hard time getting started. You know, you see how he has that triple jab right there, how he's pressing forward, right? And that's feinting, right? And I think that might be really effective. This is a side note against Billy Joe Saunders, because of the way that he transfers his weight to his back leg, and he doesn't do it as effectively as he needs to, and I think he might get kind of tripped up and maybe eat some right hands from him. But again, right, his opponent controlling the distance, right? When he starts setting up his shots, his opponent's feinting him and pressing him and moving away and giving him more looks. And David Lemieux, you know, starts to realize, okay, he's not going to let me set up my punches. But David Lemieux doesn't know how to combat that control, right? That's one of the problems with David Lemieux, partially why he got such an ass beating from Golovkin, right? Golovkin is very good at that. But instead of looking to control the space between them and set up his own offense, David Lemieux, after that, you know, maybe 30 seconds, 40 seconds into the fight, decides, okay, I'll just counterpunch, right? And right away, the first jab that he throws, right? So he shoots this jab, David Lemieux ducks. And this is beautiful, by the way. You can't really see it right here, but when he ducks, he shifts all his weight from his left leg, all the weight that's on his left leg, to his right leg, right? And then the next jab that comes, he slips it, shifts his weight to his back leg, right? All of it, and shoots that right hand. Now, the reason that this is important, and he shoots the right hand to counter the jab, is because of the way that we saw earlier how Billy Joe Saunders, did I go all the way back? How Billy Joe Saunders shoots his jab, and the way that he defends himself after, right? So he shoots that jab, and he stays on the line, right? Look how he stays right in front of his opponent. He doesn't move his head. And I think that right hand counter is going to be very effective against him. Again, you see it stays right on the line. And his opponent in this fight, let's see. His opponent in this fight, when he shoots the jab, he continues moving to his right to get away from that right hand. And I don't think that Billy Joe Saunders has the defensive responsibility to take away and make the counters from David Lemieux ineffective. And we'll see more of the counters in a minute. But again, right after he's able to take away that control, right? Remember exactly what we talked about in the Rigondeaux fight. As soon as Rigondeaux lost control of the space between them and he realized his jab wasn't going to be effective and he lost confidence in it, Lomachenko was able to just move in, feint, and probe and walk inside. And David Lemieux is able to do the exact same thing right here. Right after throwing a counter, his opponent has to immediately think, okay, I can't shoot the jab right now. He's going to counter me with the right hand. He has to figure out a new tactic. Again, his opponent shooting the jab and moving off to the right hand, and David Lemieux is making an adjustment. Look at how he's able to shoot that to the left side of his body, right, to try and catch his opponent while he's slipping to the right off of his own jab, right? It doesn't land there. That's not the point. It's the fact that David Lemieux is very aware with his counters because he's a very good counterpuncher, and we'll see more evidence of that here. Again, his opponent trying to control the distance, right? And he shoots that jab, and before his opponent can even get his arm back, which is one of the problems from that Chris Eubank Jr. was having, is that he wasn't timing the counters. He wasn't countering while Billy Joe Saunders was punching. He was coming back with counters and more of a catch and counter rhythm, right? Where the punch is already fully extended and on its way back by the time he's countering, whereas David Lemieux is timing that shot and then coming around with the hook, right? And even though this punch doesn't land clean, look at this. He hits him with his forearm because the guy leans in, right? He leans in trying to use some head movement, right? And he still goes down from a punch from the wrist. That's how much power David Lemieux has. And I don't know what the fuck this clip is for. Oh, okay. It got kind of chopped up. So David Lemieux's pressing him. Now he shoots the jab, and David Lemieux slips it, boom, and catches him with a huge hook again, right? One of the reasons why I think Billy Joe Saunders is going to have a ton of trouble with David Lemieux. I don't think he's going to be able to keep him off of him. Again, countering the jab again. Beautiful shot right here where he slips the jab and goes to the body with the right hook or the right uppercut. Beautiful shot. David Lemieux has some very impressive counters in this fight. Again, he even countering the straight right hand, right? He eats it kinda, and is able to time him and catch him with the left hook right there, while the guy's guard is up. You know, and I think that the counters are just going to be too much for Billy Joe Saunders. They're going to be too hard. They're going to be too fast, and the timing on them is going to be too good because of the fact that Billy Joe Saunders doesn't set his punches up. He doesn't use feints. He doesn't use probes. He doesn't have any way to get David out of position before David is set to counter. And I think that that's going to be a big problem for him. Again, great counters, right? And you can see how much trouble you're in. Boom. Once you're not able to control the distance against David Lemieux, he's just all over you. This guy is one of the best fighters in the division. I would love to see him fight Danny Jacobs. I think that would be a wonderful fight. Even just watching him fight Canelo would have been great. But I really think this was a misstep from Billy Joe Saunders to take this fight and take himself out of the lottery for fighting Golovkin or Canelo. I think it was a huge misstep from him. And he really should have stuck to trying to fight Golovkin for that real big payday. I did put some other clips in here. Let's see if okay, so there are some instances that I think that Billy Joe Saunders may have some success, right? With the straight left hand, right? Boom, he's able to catch him there. But look at all the painstaking how do I say it? Look at all the effort that he takes after he shoots that shot to control David Lemieux with his right hand and then spin him and turn him to stop him from eating counters, right? Again, using defensive responsibility after he shoots the shot. He's going to land another left hand right here. Boom. He lands that shot. He's able to get under the counter and spin out and use defensive responsibility. And this is something that Billy Joe Saunders doesn't use. You notice in all of those clips that I showed you in the first 2 rounds of him and Eubank Jr., he stays on the line with Eubank Jr. and allows Eubank Jr. to counter him. Even though he's not always landing the counters, it's not the point. I've already shown you other instances in which David Lemieux was able to slip a shot and adjust where he was throwing the punch, where he was throwing the counter to mitigate his opponent's defense, right? And I think that he'll be able to catch Billy Joe Saunders pretty easily. And again, another straight left hand that lands for him. But also, David Lemieux has good head movement. Once he realizes, oh, this is his strategy, he's able to get away from it, right? Boom. And he's able to counter right there. It doesn't land, but he's able to slip the straight left hand from his opponent, even though his opponent is using the same timing, and he's turning off the edge and getting away from the counter as well. But again, getting away from the counters himself, ducking the straight left hand from his opponent. And then another instance of slipping the straight left hand right here. This one's not super clear, but you can see it go right over his head as he lands a left hook right there, kind of around the ear. But again, his opponent's defense, right? This is something that Billy Joe Saunders lacked a lot. And this guy has great defense. After he shoots those shots, he takes, like, not only does he take lead foot dominance, right? Boom. He shoots that shot, takes lead foot dominance, and continues pivoting and turning to get away from David Lemieux, right? But he has good head movement. He's controlling David Lemieux, and David Lemieux was still able to find openings to counter him and to time him and eventually knock this guy out. I think it was in the 3rd round. But those are all defensive tactics that Billy Joe Saunders doesn't have. And now this is just a clip of Chris Eubank Jr., who's not a very big guy, bullying Billy Joe Saunders to the ropes and throwing power punches on him and just kind of having his way with them, doing whatever he wants in there, pushing him around. And Chris Eubank Jr. is not only the puncher, but not nearly the inside fighter that David Lemieux is. Like, look at these punches that he lands on this guy once he's able to take away the control that he has on him. And these clips right here, these are all after he's countered his jab and hurt him and then just followed him up. David Lemieux's a monster, you guys. He's a tough son of a gun. And I really don't think that Billy Joe Saunders has the tools to keep him from, to keep him not only away from him, but to keep him from guessing, and to also defend himself responsibly after he punches. Again, beautiful, right? Countering the straight right hand, boom, and cracking him with the second punch. So you've seen David Lemieux counter the jabs, counter the right hands, and I don't know that Billy Joe Saunders is going to be able to keep David Lemieux off of him with any other punches. So my prediction, to be honest, if David Lemieux shows up, and I don't have any reason to believe he wouldn't, probably, 2nd or 3rd round knockout. If Billy Joe Saunders is kind of on his bike and he allows David Lemieux to press him, it could go 6 or 7 rounds, but I don't see Billy Joe Saunders having any success in the fight that would allow him to be winning rounds. I think that David Lemieux is just too good at counterpunching, and the fact that Billy Joe Saunders does not set any of his punches up is going to be a huge problem for him. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I know all you BJS fans are not going to be happy about this, but this is my pick. Thanks, guys.